Welcome to Conscious Life Design. I'm your host, Alina Suk, a creative entrepreneur and master coach, and you are in the right place if you're looking to get empowered to actively design the life you desire. On this podcast, we mix science with spirituality, corporate and entrepreneurial experience, and strategy with intuition. Without further ado, I present you today's episode. Welcome back to Conscious Life Design. Today I have Abraham here, and Abraham, I consider him like my ace, not so secret ace. Can I say that?
I'll take it.
When I left my corporate job to become an entrepreneur, I had no idea that I needed to learn sales and marketing. I don't know what I thought was going to happen, but leap and the net appears, and this is one of the nets that appeared that we're talking to here. Abraham taught me so much about sales and marketing and really set me on the right path that allowed me to now be an entrepreneur for 3+ years, and successfully so. We met, actually, it was a cool way that we met. We co-hosted a local Miami Mind Valley community meetup and just always kept in touch from there. And I didn't even really know exactly what he did, but I reached out to him and I was like, hey, I feel like you kind of are doing what I want to do and I want to learn from you. And then do you remember what happened at that happy hour when we met? And you were like, this is kind of crazy because
Yeah, I think if I recall correctly, I mean, this was like 3 years ago, but I
yeah.
think when I saw you, I think what I said was like, man, I'd love to work with you or something along those lines because you were like the perfect, uh, in marketing, there's this idea called the avatar, right? And it's like you were my avatar, like literally. And I think I named one the female version of my avatar, Alina, and the male version Jeremy. So it's not the first time that happens. I mean, I think like that was the first time that happened to me, but ever since it's like I'll come across someone on social media and I'll say to myself like I'd love to work with that person. Out of nowhere, they reach out to me, and it's just nuts at this point.
Yeah, so I started that trend.
Trendsetter.
Yeah, we sat down and I was like, yeah, I don't know how this is gonna look, but in some capacity I want to work with you. And at that time, you were in a catalyst of your conscious life design, one of the evolutions of it. And yeah, you were like, I actually wrote down your name as somebody I want to start working with. And so you started building your entrepreneurial coaching business side by side with me as your guinea pig, and the rest is history. So beautiful journey. So grateful to be on this journey with you.
There's a lot of beautiful stories at that time, that point in our timeline because I was in that journey of I had built a business that was doing pretty well, which was this agency business, a business that probably very few people would walk away from, but there was lack of alignment, right? Like even though I was making money, I wasn't really enjoying what I was doing, and I remember saying, man, like I'd love to transition into something different that's more in more alignment. I started thinking like, man, what might that be? And it was, well, I'd love to work with not like established business owners, but people that are just getting started. And lo and behold, like you came to me, Jeremy came to me within weeks of kind of putting that clarity of intention out into the universe. And I mean that's been my life, the story of my life, right? But yeah, it was beautiful. Also, like how we coached together, because I remember before I started working with you, somebody had came to me and I worked with them, and you came to me and I was like, okay, there's something here. There's confirmation, right? So I remember when you came to me, I was like, I'll coach you, but let's do this right. And I think I said something along the lines of like, I'm going to actually create a program and put you through it rather than just kind of, in a way, just freestyling like our journey together. And I often go back to how I coached you because it was through email. I have
Mm.
our emails in our archive. And now that I coach people on how to build these offers in their version one, a lot of them, they're comparing their version one to my version 5 or 6 or 7. And I'm like, no, look at my version one. It was literally through email. Like you're so farther ahead than I am or I was at that point.
That's a really, really good point. And I didn't really think of it this way, but I kind of had the same mentality when I started coaching my clients. It was very underdeveloped compared to how it is now. It was a phone call and that's it, like a phone call and then an email summary. But when I was coaching them, I was noticing like what pain points were coming up for them. And I was like, okay, I have this theory that I can teach them or tell them about. And then I was seeing what sticks and what was making a real impact. And then I was writing it down. And that's how I created the Conscious Life Design Framework, which I'm currently putting together in version probably 3 at this point. But yeah, it's so true. And like, I actually think that the way that we were putting that together strategically and methodically speaks to also how we kind of go through life, where it's like a little bit of strategy and awareness and also flow.
Yeah.
So with that said, I'd like to know, how do you define conscious life design? What do those words mean to you?
Yeah. So conscious life design. To me, it's designing number one and living a life that is in alignment. So that's a word that I think you and I use quite often. And alignment just means like you're living in integrity with who you are, with what you truly value. And I'll highlight you because a lot of the times we're making decisions thinking there are decisions, but it's mom talking and it's with internalized mom's voice or dad's voice, and I think to be able to create a life where it's your life and it's coming from a conscious place, you have to identify those voices and in a way rebel against them, and it is through a rebellion that we evolve and we're able to create our lives, so to me it's just that it's getting to know yourself and then staying true to that, living in alignment with that, living in alignment with your values. And a big part of the work that we both do is you're helping people with the life aspect of that. I'm helping people with like the business aspect, but also like making sure that the business is not this thing that we build to make money, because I and countless of others have done that. And then you realize that like, oh, like yeah, the money's cool, but if the alignment is lacking, the money, I mean, it's not going to fulfill you. It's not going to fill your soul. So I do it through entrepreneurship. You do it through life coaching and personal branding. But it's just living in alignment. To me, that's what I would say conscious life design means to me.
Beautiful. I love that. And actually, something you mentioned is like a fundamental principle of Think and Grow Rich, right? It's like not how can I make money, but how can I contribute to the world? How can I be of service? And then the money comes after that. And I think that's what we're seeing is happening right now with a lot of people who are blowing up. They're really sharing their gifts and their experiences, and then they're feeling the return of that.
Yeah. And I had a podcast that I stopped, by the way, for anybody listening. There were two amazing episodes with Alina in that podcast. But the name of the podcast was It's Never Been Easier, right?
Mm.
And it's never been easier to go out and create that life that is in alignment with you, and I think a lot of people haven't realized that, but the people that have are realizing that it's not as hard or scary as we think that starting a business is. Maybe it was like, maybe I think the statistic that like we've all heard 99% of businesses fail within the first 6 years. I think there was a statistic that was true before the wave of the internet and social media that's kind of hit now. But you're right. I think, and not just think, I've experienced this through myself and my clients that whenever you start to tap into that alignment, tap into the reason why you are here, and it's different for all of us, things you start experience flow in your life, and you not just flow, magic, right? Like these things that we've been talking about. I think like I am where I'm at because I've relentlessly chose to listen to my intuition.
Mhm.
and it's often leading me to where people say like, why go there? Like you're crazy. Like you have it really good over here. But the more I follow that, the more things happen, and it's like it's magic, right?
Yeah.
It's magic. There's this energy that I generally believe wants us to live our lives, and I think it's part of the evolution that we're on. And we
Hmm.
could dive into how AI and all of that's going to help us do
Mm.
that, but let's not go on a crazy tangent right now.
Oh man, yeah, I know. We can go into many different directions with this stuff. Um, One thing I do want to note is that something I'm noticing, a pattern as I talk to more and more people, especially with the intention of this theme, is I'm noticing that a lot of people are leaving something that's good and that's okay and that's working out of curiosity and drive to see what more is out there.
Mhm.
And not so much in like a greedy way, but in like a curious way. Like curiosity is really big there. My last guest had the same thing. She had this great career in fashion. And then she was like, but like this isn't the lifestyle that I actually want. So let me see what else I can do. So it's this proactive drive, right? So not waiting for things to be so bad and so uncomfortable before you go and explore that maybe something better is out there for you. And it almost sounds like a little gamified in a way.
Yeah, and I think it's natural. I think that is like the natural way to live. This idea that we pick something, then we do that for the rest of our lives. Like, said who, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like when you were a kid, like you picked up a toy, and like 10 minutes later, you get tired of that toy, and you're like, give me something new. But I think as adults, and part of like the previous structures that were in place, they made it very hard for somebody to transition into a different career, right? And there was a lot of perks to staying in a company for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
Was right, like past, and I
Yeah,
think like
honestly, like,
today, why?
yeah, no, I agree. And that was actually something that scared me when I was in corporate and I would see an email come through like happy 35th anniversary. That actually, like, people were celebrating that. And I see their perspective, but that scared the shit out of me. I was like, if I stay here, and granted, like they're going through different roles within the company, everyone has their own journey, but like for me personally, that scared me. I was like, I don't want
Yeah,
to be under the same roof for 35 years.
it's a long time.
Yeah. So with that said, I actually wanted to bring up another topic that I feel that I've noticed this new pattern emerging. And I kind of feel like it's the death of the midlife crisis because I'm noticing that people are having the motions or the feelings of the midlife crisis like in their 20s now. And they're having this like, oh my God, like this is not what I want, or like I feel stuck. I need to try something else. And then, did you ever read Joe Dispenza's Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
believe he
love it.
talks. Was it that book that he talks about the midlife crisis, where people like, it was like a very small nuance, so you might not recall it because like everyone gets a little something different from every book. But I remember he talked about how people have a midlife crisis and then they like buy a car or they get a divorce or they do something like dramatic, but it's still external, and they're not really tapping into like what would make me genuinely happy right now. And I feel like we're going through a time where people are having that process earlier and then getting into the habit of evolution more regularly. And it doesn't make it any less uncomfortable per se, but it becomes a little bit more normalized. So it's not like this big traumatic event that happens in the middle of your life. Would you
Totally.
agree?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, I feel like a lot of the people that come to me are going through a quarter life crisis,
Right?
or maybe they're in their 20s. But I think it a, the reason why that is in big part is social media, right? I feel
Mm-hmm.
like now we have access to people like Joe, right? Like uh, love him or hate him, but like Gary, he has a lot of messages around like, yo, like skip that, like make the shift now, right? And I think in the past, look, like I feel our generation is so blessed and you could say curse too, but I just look at the positive side of this, that we were born in the age where we were born, where we have access to the best in the world, literally through YouTube, through social media, and can get influenced by them, right? And I think in the past, it's like you got input from your family, your immediate family, your cousins, your uncles, and school. So it's very silent information, and most of those people, they're like, okay, just go with the flow, like go where everybody else is going, but that's no longer the case. And now we can get influenced by other people that perhaps have a more elevated perspective about what it means to live a conscious life,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm glad that a lot of people are listening to that, because it's like, man, like it would suck to build a life and then at 35, 40, 45 realize that, man, I've been going in the wrong direction this whole time, right? So it's cool that people are having those midlife crises very early on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that said, even the people who are having midlife crisis or even like later in their life still have all the access to these tools and resources to make it a more pleasant experience, or to actually just get some guidance in that experience and not just be like, let me get more stuff or like do something and completely just spiral.
Totally. And when you think about it, like we're also part of that influence, like the brave souls like you, like me, that have decided to take that leap of faith and
Mm-hmm.
go all in on this new wave that's like became available to us, and like we've rode that wave, and we're like, hey guys, like this wave's pretty cool. It's a little dangerous, it's a little bumpy at time, right? But like
Yeah.
it's awesome. Like come ride it with us, So
Yeah.
it's cool to also be in a position to show other people that, hey, you can do this. Like, yes, there's another path, and if that's your path, and that's part of your conscious life design path, by all means. I'm not shitting on that, right? But for a lot of people, especially the bubble that you and I are in, it's not, and it's cool to be able to facilitate the transition into our wave, which is it's a pretty cool wave.
Yeah. So I would love to hear a little more on the magic that you experience when you do follow your intuition. Can you give some examples of things that have happened?
Totally. They call it magic, coincidences, synchronicities,
Mhm.
right? But there's just these moments that almost seem scripted. The fact that, for example, like the story that you shared earlier, right? Like, what are the odds that shout out to Jason Campbell from Mind Valley connected us
Mhm.
and has like he had us do that workshop together when I was thinking about transitioning, and like you were the perfect fit, and at that point, this other person was the perfect fit for me. And like people just appear, it's like, I think there's a quote in the Bible that says like, seek and you shall find, knock and the door will be open to you, or something along those lines, right? And it's very much like that. Like the more that you align with your with you, with yourself, with that true version of of yourself that's not influenced by society, your parents, and the more that you tap into that truth and live in alignment with that, I generally believe that's what we came here to do. And I generally believe that also the universe wants to help us do that. So, in order for us to fulfill that calling, the universe helps us along, by you meet this person, this job opens up, maybe you're looking to leave a city and you find the tenant out of nowhere, and it's like, man, like how did this even happen, right? And at first you start to see it as like it happening to you, but later there comes a point in time where you realize that, whoa, I'm more powerful than I've been led on to believe. And I can be part of this co-creation process, right? Through different practices like meditation, alignment, visualization, taking action, right? It's not just sitting and meditating, but so there are stages to it, but there's definitely one of the things that I share with all of my clients is that this game is it's half strategy, half energy. And the more that people tap into the energetic side of things, the energetic side of being a human being, the energetic side of running a business, the more that you're able to tap into that magic. And if you're someone that's listening, you're not tapped into this, I probably sound like a crazy man, right? But don't take my word for it. Like go try it out for yourself,
Mm.
and if it doesn't work, then fine. But like chances are that like myself, like Lena, like many people, that you'll actually start to experience that magic of the universe. And there's this quote, and it's like you can live life as if in two ways, as if nothing is magical or as if everything is magical, right?
Hmm.
And I chose, I think I chose the latter, right? But it's grounded in reality. I
Hmm.
think you can get too woo woo with that, and it's like, oh, I'm just gonna sit here and manifest my life by doing nothing and just tapping into the vibration of the wish being fulfilled. And I'm just like, nonsense.
I mean, sooner or later, even that person will come to realize that nothing is changing or happening, you
Yeah,
know? So, like you
totally.
can take that route and just sit and pray or meditate, however you call it, but eventually you're going to realize that without the action piece,
Yeah,
that
you
nothing's
gotta
actually gonna
you gotta work
change.
with the universe, and the universe will work with you, right? It's like
Yeah.
manifestation doesn't work unless you do.
Yeah. So my question to you is for anyone who's listening who wants to tap in either for the first time or maybe they've kind of lost their spark. How would you advise them based on your experience?
Yeah,
Like, what's the most powerful way to tap in?
it is to in a way like tap out, like disconnect,
Mm,
right? It's hard to listen when there's like so much noise. And I think like the first thing that you have to do is kind of get in touch with that inner voice. And I think like we're all addicted to social media. We're like bombarded by notifications all day. Most people never truly disconnect, and by not disconnecting, you are disconnected from that inner guidance system that it's our intuition, and you have to tap into that, and you have to feel. But it's very hard
mm,
to do that when you're always scrolling on social media, when you're always watching TV, when you're always like having information come in, right? You want to have information come in, but from a different feed, and for those who aren't
mm.
just audio, like I'm almost like pointing at the sky, because the moment that you disconnect, right, and you start to listen to all the different things that you haven't been listening to, right? The things that you have to do, this, and that. And there's a lot of clarity that comes there, right? Especially after that noise like is gone. There's a lot of clarity that comes through. And it's the things what will bubble up to the surface when you disconnect is usually the thing that you've been avoiding, right? It's like shit, like I don't feel happy in this job or in this relationship, and then like giving yourself the space to think through why that is,
Hmm.
and thinking through those things. So to me, like disconnecting is key to be able to listen to that voice, which is very faint, but it's always there. It's always there. And a what was the question?
The question is for how does one go about tapping in if they're
Yeah,
really like they've never done it before or
right.
they've gone off the path because we all fall off, right? I
Yeah,
actually meet and talk to a lot of people who are like, oh, I haven't meditated in like over a year, and then they feel this like shame and guilt that it's been so long since they've done it that it keeps them from getting back into it, and it's just a vicious cycle, and they keep going, because it's like with anything else, like when you get off the when the train gets off the track, it's really hard sometimes to to get back on. So what is like because you said to disconnect. So
yeah,
that was your initial answer. I'm gonna bring us back.
yeah, 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 yeah. Thank
So
you for
because the
reminding
thing is
me.
like the thing is that of course in most cases it's easier said than done. And what I've found um, for us, like we've this is our life now. Like this is just how we actually have both just left Miami, literally within days of each other
Yeah,
for this specific purpose to well, at least for me and I think for you as well, to really tune in and create. And what I notice is that a lot of people are actually extremely afraid to do that. They're extremely afraid to be with themselves. And so while a lot of people are unconsciously being distracted, I think there is a group of people who are aware that they're distracting themselves and they know what they need to do, but they're just really scared to be with themselves because then they're gonna have to face some shit, which is actually like the most beautiful point of change. I think we've both been there, at least for me, at least multiple times.
Mhm.
Which is another thing too, is like we go through these evolutions. Like 5 years ago, I moved to Miami and I was like, I broke through and I was like, yes, this is the next chapter. And then over the last couple of months, I was like, okay, I think this chapter is closing and I need to do something else, which is again hard. But I've gotten into a flow of like hearing that and honoring it and taking action. So, what about the people who are like so scared to hear that voice? What would you tell them?
Yeah. I mean, that's confirmation that you should tap into that. But it's like ease in. I'm not saying like go a whole day without social media or a whole week. Start with 10 minutes, right? Then go an hour, then say, hey, like I'm just gonna take the evening without my phone, without distractions, without TV, without Netflix, and just like gradually start tapping into that. And then it's like once you tap into whatever that voice is, feel into it, right? And because I think our feelings can often guide us in the direction that we're supposed to go. And you can feel into it to make decisions. For example, to what you just alluded to, I think both of us kind of felt like a chapter in Miami was kind of coming to an end, and I think a lot of people they overstay their stay, right? And they stay a little bit too long. That could be in a relationship, in a job, in a career path. And it's a big part of conscious life design is again living in truth to where your heart wants to take you. And I
Mm.
think that's like the next step. It's like once you start to get that signal, you have to trust it. And it's usually going to lead you into uncertainty. Why? I believe it's because I mean, life's meant to be experienced, right? Life's meant to, like, we're meant to grow. And it's like, if you're just staying again within that comfort zone, everything is known. Like, you already know everything that's within that. So it's like every day you're just relive. It's like Groundhog Day. You're just reliving the same day over and over and over again. But if you decide to utilize courage to go into this or into this uncertainty that your heart's leading you into, man, that's the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, and
Mm.
I think that's the next step. It's like just start taking small steps. And that could be as simple as if I'm in a career that I don't like, going to YouTube and saying, hey, how do I find a career that I like? And that's nurturing that flame, right? And it's doing more of that, and understand that it's kind of like a plant. Like you have to give it light, sunshine, and nutrients for it to kind of grow um and do its thing.
And then you come to conscious life design coaching and talk to me and
Exactly. Lincoln bio.
no, but it's true. Like actually, so two things that you said that I want to point out. One, you mentioned courage, and both of us are big fans of the levels of consciousness. I gifted that book to you and you really took to it. And courage is right on that line between the lower levels of consciousness of fear and then the higher levels of love. You go into courage because now you're like, there's the reason why it's courage is, do you remember why courage is so low on, relatively speaking? Like it's in the love section versus the fear section, but it's one of the lowest on
Right.
the love section.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's like the best of the worst and the worst of the best. Not that you should place a
Yeah.
judgment on it, but it is. Yeah.
Yeah, like it's we can call it what it is, like it's
Hmm.
not bad to be in it, but it's still like unpleasant.
Hmm.
Because there's still like a lot of ego in the courage because you're like, I deserve better for myself, because those high levels are like everything is connected. Me
Yeah.
and you and the energy and the life and the trees, everything is one. But courage is still like, I want something better for myself. I deserve better. And then that inspires action. And then as you start moving and seeing your world change, because seems like a big theme here is like action, like doing something after you hear that voice. Um, that's when you start to rise on the levels of consciousness. And as you go higher, that's when you experience the synchronicities and the extraordinary outcomes. because you get excited. Like if you think about you took one step towards your dream, that can bring so much joy. Just
Yeah.
just like book like just like going to one of your uh workshops. Like someone goes to a workshop and they're so inspired, like they're still technically just as far from their dream as they were before the workshop, in a sense, in terms of steps, but they feel so inspired, and that opens up a whole sea of
Yeah,
possibilities.
the energy changes. It's so interesting that you point that out because I never thought about analyzing Joseph Campbell's hero's journey through the levels of consciousness. But
Mm,
right, when you part of the journey is that call to adventure, and that call to
mm-hmm,
adventure might show up in like, man, I don't want to do this job anymore, right? That might show like, and I want to leave this relationship, or hey, things are good here, but I want to move to a different city.
mm-hmm,
And right there, there's a lot of fear, right? Which is like it ranks below courage. And then there's also the desire, which gives you a little bit more energy. And you're right, like once you decide to answer that call to adventure, the only way to do it is by tapping into courage. And just the act of doing that, of saying, hey, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to take a small step toward doing this to see if this is the right direction, it raises your energy. Like
mm-hmm.
just that act raises your energy. So I'd love to think more about how the different levels of energy apply to it. Because even if you look toward the end of the Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, it's like, okay, you went up to the mountain, you got the lessons, now you're coming down to share them, and you're usually doing it from a place of love, right? Which
Mm-hmm.
is beautiful. So you're even up higher, and in a way, I feel like the hero's journey is climbing the levels of consciousness. Just it's really cool to see that
Yes.
connection. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see the gears turning. Like if I were to add a graphic to this video, I'd
Yeah.
add like little gear turning.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very true. I think about the levels of consciousness pretty much daily. That was like one of the first concepts that I included in the conscious life design framework. I've had a lot of clients put it as the background on their phone as a reminder to check in where they're at. So I really love weaving that into other concepts, because essentially everything really ties together in this ancient wisdom. We're just sharing it in new ways and from different points of view. So I love how you connected that. There's one other thing that you said that I think is going to stick with me. I don't remember in what capacity you said this, but something about like, you're like, this is no longer serving me. And it made me think of like not overstaying your welcome. Did you say something like that? Something
Yeah.
to that
Yeah.
capacity?
Yeah.
And it's like no one likes a guest who overstays their welcome.
Hmm. Totally.
You
And
know?
if you don't take action on that, the person will kick you out, or the universe will push you. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's where the midlife crisis comes in. Like, guys, like,
Yeah.
don't think that you can ignore this call forever. And then you can just
Mm-hmm.
like, ah, yeah, like that's there. It'll eventually come to get you. And for a lot of people, it manifests through in somatic ways, right?
Yes.
Through disease and illness of the body.
Yes.
So
Mm-hmm.
the sooner that you answer that call, the better.
Yeah. And it reminds me of many years ago when I was kind of going through my transition from the corporate life to now what I do. I was talking to a friend about those like deeper feelings, like not the deeper feelings, but the lower levels of consciousness, like sadness and fear. And he said, sit in it, but don't live there.
Mm.
So I think that speaks to when he said sit in there, I see that as acknowledge that it's happening and don't let it then become your whole life. So at some point you have to go. And I was talking to a client earlier today and reflecting back on that big shift that I made out of the office. And I was thinking about it and I was like, I was uncomfortable, but I had a whole 7.5 year career in corporate and I didn't feel that way the whole time. So something that I do speak about is there are so many opportunities to be an entrepreneur and create your own world, but there are a lot of people for whom it serves a purpose for some time. And for those first few years, I was getting promoted a lot. I had paid time off. I loved my coworkers. I was still having fun, even though it was a little bit like ignorance is bliss. When I look back on it, I just didn't know that something else was possible for me. But I wasn't uncomfortable. I got uncomfortable within that last like 2 year mark. And that's when I felt like that's when I started borderline overstaying my welcome. And I started
Mhm.
realizing, like, okay, time to go somewhere else.
Yeah, it, it's, you know, I think that when it comes to that, to not staying in one place too long and kind of being there actually, like, but let me actually backtrack and comment on something that you said. I think the reason a lot of the times we go through something that might not be in alignment with, let's say, like the overarching theme of our life is we're the way that I see it is we're acquiring tools. We go here and we don't know, but there's a Steve Jobs commencement speech, and he always talks about like when you look back, you'll always be able to connect the dots. And I know from just because I know you so well, there's a lot of things that carried over from corporate and that serve you when you made the transition into entrepreneurship and coaching.
Mm-hmm.
And for me too, I did a little bit of corporate while I was in college. I was consulting for Penn State, and I
Mm-hmm.
was consulting for one-to-one computer services. And a lot of the organization that I have today that really serves me and serves my clients came from that corporate structure that it's not in alignment with who I am. And it probably even wasn't then. But another quote that I always share is like, as coaches, we go through it so we get others through it because it's like it's very hard to be able to relate to someone. So, how this applies to anybody that's like listening, it's like, man, like it's not that it was always out of alignment. A lot of times you had to go there, but eventually when you do get that calling, like listen to it
Mm-hmm.
because if not, it just keeps going downhill. It's this downward spiral.
Yeah, absolutely. So, do you want to share a little bit about your latest catalyst in your conscious life design, your most recent, how do we call it, like guidance, and how you followed it, how you heard it, and how you took action?
Yeah. So I lived in Miami for 4 years and I loved it. Like when I got there, again, in saying in this theme, I felt like I was never going to leave because everything was great. Weather was great. Miami was great. I love that city. Uh, but I would say about 6, 7 months ago, I started feeling like there's something off here. And it took a while for me to really understand what that was. And at first I didn't know. It's just like it just felt off. And if you've been following me on social media, you can see it in my energy on it's cool because you can like when you're creating content over the course of years, you can see energetically where you're at. And I just felt like, man, something's off, something's off. And it just felt like I had this rock in my shoe, but I couldn't quite like pinpoint what it was.
Oh, that's an annoying feeling.
Yeah,
Or
right,
like your
right.
sock is off from your
Ah,
heel.
that's the worst. Yeah, I don't even want to think about
Your
it.
sock was half off.
Yeah. Uh, so yeah, it felt just like that, and through solitude, through disconnection, I realized that okay, like I needed to go somewhere else, and it was interesting because I thought that I was just going to build long term in Miami, but I realized that perhaps I am not personally built that way. So that call to adventure kind of came into my life, and I was like, man, but like my life here is so comfortable, and I have an amazing group of people, a beautiful apartment, beautiful car. It's like everything on the outside said like, hey, like why leave? Like why sell everything and go somewhere? But on the inside, I just something that I had to do. And this is the decision that manifests for all of us in so many different ways, whether again it's to leave a relationship, career, or whatever. I've developed the habit of listening to that and honoring that. And it's led me every single time to beautiful places. It led me to Miami. It led me towards starting my coaching business. Now it led me to selling everything and moving to Colombia. And I don't know what's here. And look, like there was moments in time where like doubt would creep up, and it's like, it's just really the right move. Does it really make sense to just like sell everything and leave? And the more I tapped into that intuition, the answer was yes. And lo and behold, I got down here. I've been here for a week, and I'm surrounded by nature. The birds wake me
Mm,
up in the morning. I feel good, like I genuinely feel good. So it, for me, it's just, again, being silent enough to honor that. And I don't even think you have to be silent. Like, it'll knock. Like, at first it'll be gentle. It'll be like a gentle knock. But if you don't answer, the knock will get stronger and stronger. And eventually, again, midlife crisis kicks in because you just haven't
mhm.
answered the door for 5 years. Right. It's like,
Yeah.
hey, I've been here waiting for you.
Yeah, I think you can get into the practice of hearing it sooner. Like, I don't think it's going to be like an instant, whisper and okay, now I have this deep knowing. I think we can get into the habit of listening so that instead of it taking 5 years, it can take 6 months, right? And what I love is that it's not like a once in a lifetime shift that you're making or that I'm making. Like, we recognize that there are seasons and cycles. And so you normalize that
Yeah.
and you continue to listen and adapt as you're being guided to do so.
And I think that's the other thing that now, I mean, I haven't been here, and here, I mean, in this lifetime for that long. I'm 27, but I'm starting to see the cycles and how the cycles play out in my life. And it does feel like every 4 or 5, maximum 6 years, it's like I shed my skin of who I was and I tap into something different that usually manifests in different ways. A lot of the times there'll be this alignment of me feeling that way and a journal, because I've been journaling since I was like 18, coming to an end. It's
Mm.
very interesting. That happened in Miami. My journal came to an end. Like, literally, like, I was writing the last page the last couple of days of being in Miami, and I was like, all right, like, again, just confirmation. It's also paying attention because, like, there are signals. There are signals, and people get woo woo with it. Like, I remember a while back I posted this thing that resonated. It's like, are you seeing angel numbers, or are you like checking your phone like every 5 minutes? Like, which one is it?
Yeah.
Right. But all jokes aside, the universe is communicating with you, and in a way there is a crumb trail that you can follow if you choose to pay attention, but you have to be tapped in. And I think, like, this is
Mm.
where a lot of the practices that you teach of, romanticizing your life, meditation, are so good for silencing whatever's going on out
Slowing
there so you can
down.
listen to what's in
Yeah.
here. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. I agree. Well, I am very excited for this new chapter for you. And I already see, I know what you mean when you say that you can see the energy in the content,
Mhm.
because that's another thing is like people feel that tremendously. Like you feel it, but also your audience feels it. And it's no surprise that the content that you've created over the last couple of weeks has had tremendously high engagement because you're having more fun now. I mean, I think you were having fun before because you've been doing what you love for years now. But there's something about like doing what you love and then doing it with the energy of like being in surrender and like free and excited about your path.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're right. People feel that. And I've thought about this. I don't think the content that we record just catches, like if you look at a camera right now, like, there's a photo sensor and it's
Mm-hmm.
capturing light, right? And like, we record, like, that's what we are. Like, we are light, right? And I don't think social media is only showing you like digital version of that. I do think
Mm-hmm.
there's a bit of it that gets captured, that you're right. Like, people can feel. I think even the algorithm is probably trained to so there's a little bit more energy
That's
here.
like the universe Instagram metrics and
Yeah.
algorithms. I agree, and I'm excited to see what this next chapter holds for you on this
Thank
adventure.
you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'll add this real quick. I think that a what's happening to me on social media right now with like the last couple pieces of content like really doing well, as a result of me shifting my energy by listening to my intuition. I think you asked me like, what is that magic that you experience?
Hmm.
It's that every time I take a step toward alignment, more and more of those things happen, not just on social media, but with relationships, with people, with myself, professionally. So to anybody that's listening, like if you're hearing that call, like definitely answer that call. Like scary, but it's worth it.
Yeah. And we are both available to talk to you about that, whether it's in your business or in your identity shift. So, Abraham, why don't you let anyone listening know where they can find you?
Yeah. So Abraham Casallas on social media, anywhere. And if you want to build a business built around helping other people, I'm your guy.
And do you have any current offerings that people may access if they wish?
Many. But I'd say just go feel the energy in social media, and if you feel called to, just click that link in bio, and you'll be taken wherever you need to go.
Ooh, I love that. And actually, that is one of the biggest lessons that I learned while I was coaching with you is the shift of marketing to storytelling. And one of the biggest compliments that I receive is that people don't feel like I was selling to them, that I was just sharing and showing up and letting the right people find you. And actually, I think it was Mel Robbins recently has like a trending sound going around where she's like, social media is not for your friends and your like high school classmates. It's for you to show up and be your authentic self and share what you have to offer and allow people to find you. So I
Yeah.
think that that fits perfectly with the way that you just presented your offers. And is there anything else that you wanted to add on any of the topics that we touched on?
If you're ever moving to Medellin, I moved into an Airbnb and I made the mistake of not checking whether or not it had AC. You can
Oh,
see, like, if you're watching the video version of this, it is humid. That's still a beautiful city. Follow your passion. Thank you, Lena. Make sure it has
beautiful.
AC.
Thank you for the life advice. We appreciate it and appreciate your time.
Pleasure.